Hello, I'm Linda McIntosh from Studio ABC for my Facebook group, art group, and my YouTube channel are under the same name. Notice that the C is spelled S-E-E because we see the art. But most of my students call me Miss Mac. This is part 5 of our Elements of Art series, and we're going to focus specifically on shape and value. We did a little bit on shape in the last lesson. We're going to pick that up, go a little bit further, and work with value. I want to remind you that the elements of art are what you use to create the principles of design. They are your tools. We have already covered line, some on shape, some on space, and perspective in space, middle ground, foreground, background. And with a specific focus on value today, I think you're going to begin to see that it's hard to separate these elements of art and isolate them to teach them. When you have one, there's often something else there that supports it. We're going to make a layered drawing today, and you will have a choice between various ways of handling this. Our element of art focus will be on value. We will review and use shape as organic and geometric shapes. If you're one of my students, you need to pause the video and copy the art vocabulary into the art vocabulary section of your art journal. No groaning, because I realize it takes a little time to do this, but the art vocabulary lessons are going to become shorter and shorter as you learn the language of art. This week we only have one word, and it is values, so pause here and then return when you're finished to watch the rest of the video. You will be making layers of windows to see through, different kinds of windows, and you will need to create different values. So you will need pencils, and if you have art pencils, you would want to choose a hard one like a 3H or a 4H, and then like a regular school pencil, which is usually a 2B, and a softer pencil such as a 4B. Now if you have regular pencils, you're going to need to carefully adjust the pressure that you use on them. Your paper will be mixed media paper or a good quality drawing paper. You need an art gum eraser and a black marker with permanent ink, or you could use a black colored pencil. On my drawing paper, I began by drawing geometric shapes. I used a ruler. You can use any straight edge. You could use the edge of a book, the edge of anything that's straight if you want to make geometric straight shapes. Just be sure that you don't mark on the book if you use the edge of a book. You'll want to be careful with things like that might be valuable. I filled the page with various kinds of triangles, large triangles, just something to fill up the page. You probably already noticed that I was using a black Sharpie with permanent ink as my permanent ink marker. And I made other triangles fit into the space. Some of them were closer to being equilateral triangles, some of them just all kinds of mathematical triangles. I'm sure in your math classes you've studied obtuse, acute, right angle triangles. All of those come into place in art. Art and math are often related. Art and most subjects are related. I left a thin space between each triangle, but I tried to alter that a bit so that some of them would be closer to the edges and further away from edges. I felt like doing this by causing the spaces between the triangles to be different, even like starting little and ending wide in some places, helped give interest to my drawing. I kept drawing triangles until I filled up the whole page. No little tiny triangles, because I knew later I was going to need to work inside of these triangles. I also realized that if I made little triangles, I wouldn't be able, when I got to some of the other layers, each time you make a new layer, the space is going to get smaller. So if I started with tiny triangles, I was going to be in trouble later. This is the look of my final drawing for the first layer. My second step was to choose an H pencil, which is a hard pencil. Mine happened to be a 4H pencil, and I began shading between each triangle. Now, if you've been through art and I have helped you do self-critiques, I quite often ask you, next time you did this, if you did this project over, what would you change? Immediately, I found something I would change. I don't think if I did this again, I would do any shading at all at this level. I would leave all that space white until I got to the next level. I decided that I wanted to use organic shapes for the next level. And so I drew them. I treated these like they were windows, and I could see through them to see organic shapes. So you see, I was kind of sketching and making sure that the line followed from one triangle to another as I made this oval type shape. And I want to mention here, don't be afraid to turn your sketchbook. I work upside down quite often. You know what you're doing, and you don't have to turn it a certain way. We get accustomed to having our notebooks a certain way so that we can write in them. You don't have to do that in art. Later on, when we study art principles, you'll be trying to balance everything. And so turning your page helps you see the balance in every direction. And just like I tried to fill the page with all of the geometric triangles that I drew, I'm trying to fill the triangles now with a bunch of organic shapes, leaving very little space between them. Probably more space than there was to begin with between the triangles, but taking up a lot of the space and continuing it under the other triangles. Remember, I said they act like windows, like you're looking down through a window. Because I know that these are going to become my next windows, and I have to have room to draw something inside of these organic shapes. The value of those things will become darker with each layer. As I was drawing these, I was thinking, what would it look like if I looked through a triangle window and saw a lot of pebbles or stones, rounded type stones? And that one right there didn't quite match, so I erased it and thought about my line again and put a new line in. And I'm drawing very light. I would have drawn even lighter than this, but I was afraid that you couldn't see it on the video. I'm not trying to make anything that looks realistic. It's just pattern. It's an abstract. I hope when we study principles of design that you will realize, and maybe hopefully you realize it now, that by using the same similar types of shapes all over this design, I'm forming unity. Even though I have hard, crisp, straight edges in one layer and organic, curving edges in another, it still has unity. Look how large these shapes are underneath the triangular windows. These are going to become windows again, I told you this, and so I'm going to need them to be large so that I can fit some more inside of them. I shaded it in with a little darker value this time, putting more pressure on my pencil. But if you're using H pencils, you can't put too much pressure on them because they will tear your paper up, so you need to move to another pencil, a softer pencil. I started out to leave implied line for these, but I didn't really like it, so I went back with my Sharpie and I added lines around these shapes. Then I went back with my eraser and I cleaned up some areas you can see here. In some areas I didn't quite get up to the space that I wanted to, so I went back with my pencil. I looked at all the little white spaces I had left and filled those in. I erased anything that got outside the lines. And then I began using these as windows and began doing triangles again. So inside of these kind of egg-shaped organic windows that I have now, I started drawing triangles. Even though these shapes overlap each other and go under the windows in places, notice how each layer begins to get smaller and smaller. So I shaded those in and I outlined them with Sharpies, but I shaded them in with even a darker pencil. If you invested in artist pencils, this is probably where you need to begin shading in with a B pencil, probably a 3B at least, or a 4B. If you try to force a pencil to do the hardest, darkest that it can, it often tears your paper or becomes too shiny and distracts from your picture. If you are a serious student, then you probably need to go invest in some good art pencils. You don't have to have a lot, just a few to start with. Some hard ones and some soft ones. And on my last layers, I started filling them in with Sharpies. But if I knew this was going to be my last layer that I was going to do, I wanted some interest in it. I wanted something different here to draw your eye to it. So I chose to do some little circles and repetitions and little odd and end things on this layer that I hadn't done in the other layers, just to draw your eye in to the design. This was kind of hypnotic or mesmerizing in a way. It just was relaxing to just shade and work with value and the shapes, the organic shapes, the mathematical geometric type shapes. And I was pleased with it that when I got through, but I wanted to take it a step further. So I'm going to show you some others here, and if you want to see how I did those, you'll have to look at some other videos. I'm going to make 2 more videos showing 2 more ways that I did this, but you might want to develop your own method. The key to this is you need to have layers, you need to have windows you can see through, and each layer has to have a darker value or a lighter value. Maybe you want to start with the dark value. I will caution you though, it's easy to smear when you start with dark and try to go light. This is the second project that I did, and I did it with all organic shapes and a different type of method of shading. And I started the third one and used watercolor pencils in a monochromatic scale of mostly like bluish, purplish colors. And I'll try to have those videos out for you soon. In this particular project, I wasn't actually finished with it at this stage. But it was very close to being finished, so I used this because I left the photo of it at school and I'm doing this video at home, but this was close. I hope you'll give this video a thumbs up, and if you click the bell, I understand that you get notifications every time I put a new video out. Good luck with your project, and thank you for watching.